So the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has dispatched army personnel to areas that experienced the New Year's Day earthquake. The 7.6 magnitude quake that struck in the central part of Japan has caused numerous casualties and extensive damage. At least 30 people have died and many others are trapped under the rubble in several towns. Hundreds of buildings have collapsed or burned down. SABC News correspondent Gilbert is in Tokyo and has more on the story. Chris, good morning to you. Very disturbing images that certainly we are receiving from our side. Explain to us, where you are, what you're seeing, and then we'll get into the death toll, if you will.
Yeah, well, I'm in Tokyo, and it's really a tale of two worlds because nobody in Tokyo knew anything had happened, but just, a couple of 100 kilometers on the other side of Japan's main island, Honshu, not too far from here. Those images of widespread devastation, isolated in Ishikawa and around the Noto Peninsula. We're heading into the second night here in Japan since this disaster happened, and the government is really still trying to get its head around the extent of it. The Noto Peninsula is an isolated area, it's a mountainous area. The roads have been cut off by landslides and damage, and they're really trying to make sense of, okay, how many people have been affected in terms of who is stuck in their homes, who is stuck under debris and rubble, who needs to be rescued, and what are our priorities. And they say that they're working with local officials to work out their information and target and prioritize key parts of the area to try and rescue people. So this is about a search and rescue operation at the moment, with Mother Nature still sending in aftershocks, and in the forecast rain as well, heightening the risk of landslides.
Yeah, you talk about aftershocks, and I think that's the part that, many residents that are in the affected area might be quite terrified of. We're hearing over 100 tremors since the quake hit.
Yeah, 150 or not more. Following tremors like this, it's not unusual to have thousands and thousands of aftershocks. And the large earthquakes I've been in, such as this one, you don't trust the ground under your feet anymore. What you take for granted to be strong and stable just is moving all of the time. And so that is what people are facing at the moment, and the government is absolutely urging people to stay vigilant. That the officials in the meteorological agency are saying that a similar earthquake could strike still in the next week, and the significance of that is not just more trauma and fear and devastation for the region, but also buildings which did not collapse, buildings which stood but might have had their structural integrity damaged by the first earthquake. If a second one comes along, those buildings could all come down. That's what we've seen in similar situations before, and that's what officials are worried about. So they're asking people to remain vigilant and stay in evacuation centers for as long as necessary until the danger is well and truly past. Yeah,
can we talk a little bit about the extent of the damage that we're talking about here? We rolled some images a little bit earlier as we brought the story to our viewers of really just that shake, the images of really the ground shaking, very, very concerning images. And we're also getting reports of houses washed into the ocean. So talk to us about the extent of the damage that we've seen there.
Well, we do know that from a fire that broke out in Wajima City, one of the main cities on the Noto Peninsula, there was a huge fire 24 hours ago, just after the earthquake, and it spread very, very quickly. It has now been put out, but we do know that about 300 buildings were destroyed in that fire, and countless more have just collapsed from the earthquake, collapsed over time, collapsed onto other buildings. Stories of people's walls falling onto their beds, and them hiding under the futon bed for cushioning and saving their lives that way. And so the government itself is still trying to figure out just how much damage has happened, because there are lots of small villages in this rural part of the country there is a high ratio of older people who are living there, who may be cut off from communications, who may be living alone. Thankfully, it is a time of year, the New Year's period, where people go home, leave Tokyo and go home to the rural areas. And so hopefully the vulnerable people have a higher chance of having people to look after them around. But it is something the government is still trying to wrap its head around. We do know that 33,000 people are still, households are still without power. 19 of those are some hospitals which are running on backup generators. There are scores and scores of injured who have been coming in throughout the day and for treatment, and there's water issues as well. Not to mention there are people in just normal facilities like universities who are writing SOS on the car park for any helicopters to come and see that they've been isolated. So there are trapped people everywhere, and the government and officials are really trying to work out just how, what the extent of the damage has been.
Goodness, and we're running some of those images right now, very difficult to take in. Chris, if you just talk to us about what government's communication now on the ground to people, considering that we're hearing that there have been tsunami alerts. So are we also seeing evacuations taking place even as we speak?
Yeah, so the tsunami alerts have been lifted from the original earthquake 24 hours ago. Tsunamis did arrive of about 1.5 meters, but there is still the risk of tidal waves. There is still the risk of aftershocks causing further tsunamis. Evacuations are ongoing, and the official advice from the government and other officials is to stay in a safe place for as long as possible. To stay around the evacuation services, which are school gymnasiums and town halls and other evacuation centres, for as long as possible.
Yeah, at this point we've got a death toll of 30 people. Has that number been updated?
Yeah, it's 48 now, and as I've been, talking about earlier, it's really a matter of finding out who needs the help and who needs to be rescued. The government has been, calling this a battle against time, and it truly is. We're going into, as I say, the second night. As you can tell, it's very cold. It's much colder on the Sea of Japan side of the country, and it is about identifying, the houses and the pockets of the mountains where people might be trapped, and as officials and search and rescue units have been traveling through these villages throughout Tuesday. They have been one by one rescuing people from the rubble. There are lots of rescue stories, which are always a relief to hear in these times. Lots of stories coming out from people looking on their neighbors. But there is an expectation that as officials look to continue to rescue people, that number may continue to steadily rise.
Yeah, Chris, we really do appreciate your time and giving us that update. Of course, do stay safe as well. That there, SABC News correspondent Chris Gilbert speaking to us from Tokyo in Japan, where rescue teams in the country are struggling to reach isolated areas hit by a powerful earthquake on New Year's Day that now we update has left 48 people dead.